Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar on Autistic College Students moving forward in unpredictable times. We are honored that Dr. Jane Thierfeld Brown and Sara Gardner accepted the invitation to present today. Before I officially introduce our presenters, please allow me to address a few logistical items. I am Will Francis, Project Director for Post-Secondary Education at the UCLA Tarjan Center. The Tarjan Center at UCLA is a federally designated Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities and your host for today's webinar. Support for today's webinar comes from the California Community College's Chancellor's Office through a contract that enables us to provide technical assistance and training to community colleges DSPS who are working to provide equitable supports, services, and opportunities for students with disabilities, including intellectual disability and autism. Thank you for joining us. Your participation is much appreciated. Some of our institutions are reevaluating the safety and related concerns of returning to face-to-face instruction and services. For approximately the span of 1 year, Dr. Thierfeld Brown and I contemplated and discussed a webinar to address concerns around returning to campus. We are happy to provide this webinar today. We hope you will find the content useful and applicable in your work in supporting students. A number of our colleagues are unable to attend today's webinar and have requested a recording of the proceedings. In order to facilitate access to a clean recording of the webinar, we've muted all calls. As we proceed through today's webinar, our presenters would love to respond to questions that arise from or that are related to the content of the presentation. Please take a moment to look at the bottom of the Zoom program display where you will find a chat or text box. We are asking that you insert your questions into the chat box or in the Q&A throughout the duration of the webinar. We will address your questions and welcome you to submit as many questions as naturally arise. Our presenters will stop occasionally to address your questions, and we are asking you to insert your questions into the chat at any time. This may be a good time to test the chat function. If you would like, please insert a greeting into the chat box. Thank you. Now I will provide some information about our presenters. Dr. Jane Thierfeld Brown is Director of College Autism Spectrum and is a former assistant clinical professor at Yale Child Study at the Yale Medical School, and she is a former Director of Student Services at the University of Connecticut School of Law. She has worked in disability services for 42 years and holds a Doctor of Education degree from Columbia University Teachers College and received an honorary Doctorate of Letters from Muhlenberg College in 2020. Dr. Brown consults with many families, students, school districts, and institutions of higher education. She has appeared on Good Morning America, CBS News, and NPR. She has co-authored Students with Asperger's, a guide for college professionals, published in English in 2009 and in Japanese in 2017. The Parent's Guide to College for Students on the Autism Spectrum, published in 2012, and Behavior Management and Self-Regulation, also published in 2012. She has written many textbook chapters and articles. Last but not least, Dr. Brown received the Ron Blosser Dedicated Service Award from the Association of Higher Education and Disability in 2019. She is married and has 3 children, the youngest being a 30-year-old son with autism. And now I will introduce Sara Gardner. Sara Gardner's work in the disability field began in 2001 when, as a newly diagnosed autistic, they served as a parent advocate for IEP meetings, provided parenting classes at United Cerebral Palsy, and was president of a 600 family autism support group in Orange County, California. In 2011, Sara designed and developed the nationally recognized Neurodiversity Navigators at Bellevue College in Washington State, which has grown to serve over 300 students in tiered services. As director of the program, Sara leads a team of staff and peer mentors, designs curriculum, teaches the first class in the 9-course series, and works to support disability inclusion and accessibility across campus. Through their Autistic at Work LLC, Sara also provides workshops and e-learning on neurodiversity, cultural responsiveness for Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, and other corporations. Sara has a 31-year-old autistic son and a 12-year-old dachshund. Sara's pronouns are they, them, theirs. And now, without further ado, here's the team of Dr. Thierfeld Brown and Sara Sanders Gardner.
Thank you, Will. I so appreciate being invited today, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. I've talked to you a number of times pre-pandemic about students in your colleges and in your classrooms that are autistic. And today we want to talk to you about students and also talk about you and your work in your offices and disability services. I'm honored that Sara Sanders Gardner is joining me today, and Sara is going to do the majority of the webinar. I'm going to speak to you a little bit at the end. Sara is not only respected, but revered in the world of autism and college students because of her wonderful program at Bellevue. And I'm sure you'll all really enjoy everything that Sara is bringing to the webinar today. So with that, I'll leave it to Sara.
Thanks so much, Jane. I believe that we're going to be putting a link to the deck in the chat right now or sometime very, very soon so that you can all access it. In fact, maybe I can do that. Oh, I think I can. There you go. So you can access the deck. I wanted to point out that you can reach Jane's website by clicking on her logo. You can reach her LinkedIn by clicking on her name. Same with me, my logos, and my name. So that's where you can find us if you want to find us after this presentation. And today we're going to be talking about, we're going to do introductions in the chat in just a moment. We're going to be talking about trauma-informed educational practices, communication strategies, boundary setting, and we do want you to ask questions and share information throughout. If typing in the chat or question and answer does not work for you, please feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute you as well. Jane will be looking for that too and can let me know if someone's raised their hand. So just let us know that. If you need captions, there's a little, for me, it's showing up as the 3 dots under more, and you can click on that and turn on the subtitles. It didn't show up as a CC for me, so just wanted to point that out in case it looks different on your screen than you've seen it in previous Zoom webinars. Okay, so let's get going with the introduction. So here's what you can put in the chat. Any or all of the following. Your name, which if you're already signed in as your name, it will show up, so no need to retype it. Your pronouns, if you'd like. Your role, your title and affiliation, so the institution you're from or wherever else you're from. Your biggest concern that you have coming here today, and something that you maybe would like to share with everyone who's on the call. So something that's working for you, something you're excited about, something you're doing, any of those things, any or all of those things. So we'll give you a few minutes to share those things. And let me just type that. Jane, actually, if you wouldn't mind typing those into the chat, that would be helpful. So I'll go on to the next slide as we do that as well. And again, you can find this deck by clicking on that link and you'll have that whole deck for you as well. And we would love to hear what your concerns are that you're here today. Anything you hope to share, any of those things. We'd love to hear what you're doing out there in the field as well.
Okay, it's in the chat.
Okay. Raise awareness to help all students by making classroom work better for autistic students. Yes. Okay. All right. So we're going to start with trauma-informed practices. We're going to talk a little bit about what our students are experiencing on a college campus. It's not going to be a breakout activity. We're just going to do it in one big group. We're going to share your ideas, and we're going to talk a little bit about intersectionality and cultural responsiveness. So let's take a look at the autism spectrum as a spectrum that has depth and breadth rather than the linear spectrum that we often think about. So oftentimes we think about the autism spectrum as this linear with low functioning autism and high functioning autism. And the medical community and the autism community has asked us, please don't use those terms. They don't really tell us what's going on for a person, and they can be insulting. So if you stop and think about, would you like someone to describe you in that way? Probably not. And so instead, we're going to talk about what are the strengths of the person that we're working with or the person that we know. As we would describe anyone. If I was going to describe Jane to someone, I wouldn't usually tell you what her problems were. I would tell you what she's good at. So that's how we're going to talk about our students and anyone on the autism spectrum. So this model was developed by a person named Rebecca Burgess. They are Theora on Tumblr, and they took the spectrum color wheel and they put these things around it that affect autistic people and really all people: language, motor skills, perception, executive function, sensory, and put these little dots in here to represent the person's functioning ability in that moment in time, in that environment. So if this is me, for example, I'm autistic. My language skills are okay. My motor skills are not that great. My perception's pretty good. My executive functioning is pretty good. My sensory is pretty affected by my environment. And so this is on a regular day. My sensory has gotten better since we've been stay at home because I can control it a little bit better. However, I'm very, very affected, as are many or probably most autistic people. So I'm going to give you an example from my life. I've known I was autistic for 20 years. I've been autistic for almost 61 years. And twice in my life, I've had an event that has really caused me a problem. And here's what the problem was. I was at conferences in cities I wasn't familiar with, in hotels I wasn't familiar with, big venues, speaking in front of a very large audience. I'm used to speaking in front of large audiences. That wasn't a problem. But what happened was a fire alarm went off. And here's what happened to me. All of my skills went down to nothing because my sensory was so strongly affected, and I was in an unfamiliar place, and there were so many people around, and I didn't know what to do. I lost my ability to speak. I lost my ability to move. I lost my ability to make plans. I lost my ability to perceive what was happening around me. And I simply stood there and rocked back and forth. This has happened to me twice in very similar situations. Now I know I need to say to people in that situation, hey, if a fire alarm goes off, please take me out of the room, right? If a fire alarm goes off and I'm at work, I'm fine. I know how to get out of there, right? If I'm by myself in a hotel room and a fire alarm goes off, I'm fine. I only have me to think about. I don't have all that other stuff going on. So I bring this up to say, autistic people have fluctuating levels of capability. You already know this, but it is something that has to be taken into account and really understood. It is not under our control. It is not under your students' control. And there are many factors at play, which we're going to talk about. So what I want you to think about, thank you, Tracy. What I want you to think about as we're going through co-occurring disabilities that often or maybe always come along with an autism diagnosis, think about how these impact someone on a typical college campus during a typical college day, how someone might need to use these skills or use something that is affected by this disability. Feel free to put it in the chat, how you think that might be how it might affect someone, or what kind of accommodation or support you might be able to give someone if they're having this difficulty. So I'm going to try to give you percentages of these co-occurring disabilities as well. So nonverbal learning disability, it is my opinion that all autistic people have a nonverbal learning disability. Not all people with a nonverbal learning disability are autistic, but the other way around, yes. So I'm going to talk in a few slides later what that means, but nonverbal learning disability, how might that affect someone on a typical college campus? Sensory processing sensitivities often rising to the level of a sensory processing disorder. So an important distinction to make, right? If you're the person providing accommodations or you're the instructor in the classroom, sensitivity is different, right, than a disorder. Disorder, for me, it can be a disorder, right? It was a disorder in the situation I talked about. A lot of times though, some of my sensory processing is just a sensitivity and I can deal with it. So teasing those out, 85% of people with an autism diagnosis meet the criteria for autism for sensory processing disorder. So keep that in mind. If someone's having a problem, it is likely related to sensory processing. Auditory processing. Fun fact, maybe not so fun. Since the pandemic started, more and more people are being diagnosed with auditory processing disorder, autistic or not, because we have found out, yes, yeah, deaf and hard of hearing services coordinator, you're definitely getting an increase in autistic students. Yeah, so here's what we found out when the pandemic started, that many more people read lips than know that they do. Because suddenly our faces were covered by masks and people were like, what did you say? It wasn't because they couldn't hear. It was because they were used to reading lips. So being able to turn on captions is helpful for that, but also providing things in writing, right? Think about during a typical college day, how many times you're expected to rely on what you hear and not what you're reading, or vice versa if you have dyslexia along with it. Obsessive compulsive behaviors, many autistic people, it doesn't rise to the level of autistic compulsive disorder, but definitely have autistic compulsive behaviors that may interfere a little bit with what they're doing, but don't get in the way of them maybe being able to walk across campus or whatever. So for example, when I'm playing a video game, I have to get to an even score before I can stop playing the video game. Does it interfere with my work? Not usually. I can get to an even score pretty easily. Anyway, just an example. Dyspraxia is a whole body movement disorder. I believe it affects more of us than we actually know. The Syracuse University has been doing studies, many people have been doing studies for years on, is autism actually a movement disorder? For most of us, it just looks like clumsiness. Jane, you may know more about this than I do. Dropping things, spilling things. Please feel free to unmute and speak up if you would like to.
No, I agree completely. The dyspraxia, sometimes students will look more disabled than we know them to be because of dyspraxia.
Yes, right. Yes. And very good point. Often autism is a non-apparent disability, but a dyspraxic student may look more disabled than they actually are. Yeah. They may not even be able to speak, right? They may use assistive technology. It doesn't affect their intellect, but it affects their motor planning, et cetera. Dysgraphia is disorder of written expression, affects handwriting, but also affects the ability to string sentences together into coherent paragraphs, et cetera. When we interview our students, when they're coming in, they are either strong in math and poor in English, or strong in English and poor in math. Those, like, they're almost never strong in both. But a dysgraphic student isn't just bad handwriting, but they often have pain and fatigue with handwriting. So making them practice to get better handwriting is like the worst thing to do to them. But they may need some scaffolding for writing in general as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. Executive functioning variances, up to 75% of autistic people also meet the criteria for ADHD. Used to be you couldn't get a dual diagnosis. Now you can, because they're realizing there's so much overlap. But executive functioning, as most of you likely know is the little computer in our brains for how we get things done, right? Time management, organization and planning, focus, impulse control, working memory, all sorts of things. Best book I have for that is The Smart But Scattered Guide to Success, which is written for adults. Peg Dawson and Richard Guar wrote finally one for adults. So that's a great book for that. Visual processing can be very difficult for many of us. I have prosopagnosia, which means I don't recognize people's faces when I see them. Jane, I could walk next to you in a grocery store, and if I don't know you're going to be there, I won't know it's you, right? Even though I recognize you from many, many Zoom calls. Yeah, the title of the book in the chat is The Smart But Scattered. Oops, can't type. Scattered Guide to Success. Dawson. Guar. So, but visual processing also can affect one's ability to like look at a screen and then write at their desk. So like if you're giving a test that the questions are up on the screen and then the student has to write it on at their desk, that can be a real visual processing nightmare for a student. Expressive language, as we know, all people under stress can lose the ability to sleep or with too much anxiety to speak or without having enough sleep, which sleep disorders are also rampant in the autism community. So allowing students to have time, allowing students to keyboard or handwrite or express themselves in some other way is also an important thing to include. Prosody is just tone of voice, not taking offense if someone's tone of voice sounds angry, or if they're speaking really loudly, or if they're speaking really quietly. Lots of different things that tone of voice can come across as. Anxiety and depression, as we know, is affecting all of our students right now, autistic or not. And then most of our students can be very, very tenacious unless they're affected by that anxiety and depression, or even if they are. Okay. I'm going to walk you through a scenario right now. So please get ready to respond. I don't know if anybody can unmute. Well, let's try this in the chat. Try responding in the chat. I'm going to walk you through a scenario, and I want you to answer the questions that I'm asking about your feelings during this scenario. And then there might be some yes, no, etc. So I want you to imagine that you are on this snowy road in the middle of nowhere. There's no houses around. There's no one around, no other cars. And this symbol comes on in your car. It's got that little exclamation point and that little oval. Who knows what that symbol is? Let's put it in the chat. Tires. Yep, tire pressure, low tire pressure. Yep. Okay, so the low tire pressure comes on. How are you feeling when you see that? Yep, nervous, terrified, anxious, uh-oh. Yep, panic, worried. All right, so it would not be wise to try to drive on that, Oh, some people say it comes on in colder weather. Okay, well, you stop and you check it out and you do have a flat tire. It would not be, it's been on since I bought my car, Elizabeth, I'm sorry. You stop and you're like, oh, I do have a flat tire. Would not be wise to try to drive because do you see right here, there's a pretty big drop off. And if you try to drive, you could slide off of that drop off. So you pull over, and what is the first thing you're going to try to do? Call for assistance, assess the damage, call. All right, you are so far away from civilization, there is no cell service. Now, how are you feeling? Very worried, freak out, look at the manual, frightened, pull out the manual. Yes, some of you are getting right to action. Okay, so you pull out the manual. What are you going to do now? Check supplies, right? What supplies do you need?
Research. I do love academics.
Research. Change the tire. Safe area, blanket, snacks. Yes. Jack.
Right. Yeah.
Mary's got it. You need a jack. So you open up your trunk. You've got the replacement tire. You've got the lug nut thing, whatever that's called. You've got a tire gauge. You do not have a jack. How do you feel now? Harness my grandpa's ability to do anything. Defeated, cold, angry. Yes. Mary is either angry at someone else or angry at herself. We don't know who, right? Someone is in trouble. Elizabeth knows who Elizabeth is angry at. About shelter. Find the person who had the snacks and go hang out with them. Terrified. If it's daylight, I'm trying to repair it. At night, I'm just holding in place. Right. You can't repair it. I'm just going to tell you right now, there is nothing. If you look around, there's nothing you can use to fix this car. Okay. No jack. You could be angry at someone else. You could be angry at yourself. Check your gas to see if you can stay warm. Pray. Good job, Cynthia. All right. Along comes, this is how it ends. Araceli goes right to it. I'm dying. All right. Along comes a police car. How do you feel when you see the police car? Some of you feel more scared. Some feel relieved and hopeful. Depends, right? Depends on who you are. Depends on your past experiences. Depends. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Depends if he's.
I want you to know, though, please know that not everyone has the same feeling when the police car is coming up. Okay. They come up, they roll down their window and they say, I see you have a flat tire. You're going to need to get that changed and off the side of the road in the next 30 minutes, or we're going to tow your car. We're going to fine you $5,000 and you'll likely have to spend the night in jail. And they drive away. How do you feel? Can you change a flat tire? Furious and scared. Abandoned. Angry, angry, angry. I have no jack. Good, tow the car. Pretty upset and angry. If I can't change it, take me. Abandoned. Ask if they already left. You can't ask them, Diego. They're gone. All right. So now another police car drives up. How do you feel when you see the second police car? Still hopeful? Oh, some of you are still hopeful. Anxious, apprehensive, not so hopeful, sure, not so sure. Hopeful maybe this one will help me. Just as scared and stressed, guarded. Okay, some of you are feeling less hopeful. Hopeful it's a nicer cop. Okay, so this one comes up and they say, I know you talked to my partner. They're pretty doom and gloom. I have to tell you about a great thing that we have going on right now, though. It is true, you know, you'll get the fine, you'll get your car towed, you'll have to spend the night in jail, but I have something I think is going to help you. We have this great thing going on that when you get your tire fixed, they don't give you a chance to ask Christine, they're just talking to you. When you get your tire fixed, notice they use that word when, not if, right? When you get your tire fixed, and I know you've done it before, I'm sure you can do it. I have faith in you. When you get your tire fixed, not only will you avoid that fine, avoid that night in jail, avoid those towing fees, all of that, we're going to give you a new set of tires, a new set of tire changing tools, and you're going to get your choice of free coffee for a year or free donuts for a year. Doesn't that sound great? Oh, and I have something else for you. I have this great pad that you can kneel on to change your tire. I know it's been super helpful for so many people. Good luck. See ya. And they leave. Can you change a flat tire? Doesn't address my immediate need.
But the coffee sounds good.
The coffee sounds good. Frustrated. Bonus. How much is it again? The bonus is free tires. Bunch of stuff, not very helpful. Okay, so here's my question to you. Do you understand, or are you starting to understand how students might feel when they come to college and you are the third police officer who has come up to them to offer help or to tell them they're going to fail if they don't do their work, or to say, put your assignments in a binder or on a calendar, or do this time management, or any of these things, right? They've been burned before by unhelpful people, right? Yeah, Okay, so you can read more about how to help this in a book called Changeable, and the link is on the PDF. Yeah, most of my students are done by the time they see me. Yeah, so this book, How Collaborative Problem Solving Changes Lives at Home, School, at Work by Stuart Ablon, will help you begin to repair those relationships with the students. Now I'm going to breeze through these next slides really quickly. Okay, what does foster this intrinsic motivation? Because what we just did with those two police officers kills intrinsic motivation, right? They don't want to try anymore. They're like, no, right? Some of you were at it with the first police officer. You're like, just take me. Go ahead, take me to jail. I don't care, right? We know those students already. Here's what helps: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So we're going to talk about this really quick. Competence, the experience of mastery and being effective in one's activity. While I'm going through this, I want you to think about what you can do on your campus to do this. It's on the deck. So let me see if I have the link. There's the link to the deck. Think about what you can do on your campus. That's the link to the PDF right there. Alina, right above where you just typed. If you click on that link, you will get the PDF. Let me know if that doesn't work.
You go
Sorry,
ahead, Sarah. I'll
Slide deck.
answer on the chat. Go ahead.
I apologize.
You keep talking.
Okay, so humans need to deal effectively with their environment. So be thinking about what can you do about these things on your campus, or what are you doing right now that's counterproductive to these things? Okay, then autonomy. Students need to feel autonomy. The feeling that one has choice and willingly endorsing one's behavior. Humans need to control the course of their lives. And then let's see, I need to share my sound. So let me do this. Okay. Now this is a video for you to listen to. It's 47 seconds. So here we go.
You want me to help, Rose?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
What do you want me to do?
What about yourself? What about yourself? I'll do this one, so gonna do that. You drive! What about yourself? Go drive! Go! What about yourself?
So that's a little girl telling her parent at that little young age, you worry about yourself. I will worry about myself. Yes. Yeah, I'll try to get that link to you later. While Jane's talking, I'll find that link. So think about that. This is especially important for parents because we get very anxious about our students, right? Worry about ourselves, let the students worry about themselves, offer the help. And then our students need relatedness. They need to feel connected and belongingness with others. They need to have close, affectionate relationships. So this is what we're going to talk about right now. What are you already doing? And put this in the chat, please. Yeah, you do need to say it to your mother. Yes, I know. My son says it to me. I mean, I try, I really try. He's very fortunate that I have to train parents all the time because it reminds me. What are you already doing that supports student motivation along these lines? Go ahead and put that in the chat to help other people. Give them some ideas. Yes, choice education. Okay. What could you stop doing to better support students? It's just maybe write stop in front of it if you want to. Asking consumers what they need rather than assuming you know. Yeah, for sure. Keep them coming. Give more time. Focus on their strengths. Ask what they want. Yep. Assume that I know what they need to do. Yep. Frequent check-ins, group work. Yes. Stop prompting. Yep.
Yes, please. Yes.
Let them speak. Listening to them. Woo, woo, now you got it. Okay. We're going to have to save this chat.
Yes.
Send it out to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Dignity of risk. Recognize they're human beings with life challenges. Encourage them. It's okay to ask questions, be more flexible, repeat what they said, listen. I can't even read them all because they're coming in so fast. This is awesome. Clarify that I understood. Stop assuming I know what they want. Yes, fantastic. Okay, and then last question. What would you like to learn more about? And go ahead and put that in, and I'm going to move on, and Jane's going to capture those things and make sure we hopefully tell you.
Yes.
All right. All right, here we go. So I do want to quickly talk about addressing intersectionality and power. Most of you have already thought about these things. The addressing model can be found at this link on the PowerPoint. And it's just a quick little way of thinking through the different things that affect different people's lives, including ours. And what we need to think about is, what identities do we bring to every interaction with a student? And what identities do they bring to the interaction? So someone mentioned here, introverted folks, right? So we are bringing our identities under these, and they are bringing their identities. And the power differential is important to think about, because we may be thinking we're listening to them or getting what they really think. But if they feel pressure based on the power that we bring, we need to figure out a way to even that out first. So age, disability, religion, ethnicity, social class, sexual orientation, indigenous backgrounds, national origin, gender. And I put these 3 pictures here very specifically because to look at these students, you may have an idea in your mind about what their experience was on a college campus: a transgender student, a female presenting student, a Black student who looks very happy to have graduated. But what we don't know from just looking at them is, what other experiences did they have? What other identities did they have? Sometimes we make assumptions that aren't really true. And so the only way we can find out is to, as you suggested, listen to them, right? And find out what they're wanting and what they need and how to best help them or support them. Okay, now we're going to talk on communication strategies. And I put this cartoon up here because it says, I signed you up for a class to try to get rid of that thing you have. And the employee says, or this, let's say he's a student, what thing? The thing, you know, the thing that makes you the way you are. My personality, or let's say my autism. Exactly, but we call it communication skills because it sounds less rude. So we're going to talk about common barriers our students have: nonverbal communication, plain language, and collaborative problem solving. So we're going to do a quick group brainstorm. What are some common communication barriers that you're seeing with your students? So I noticed you've already put some in the chat, right? Helping them engage with other students. What are some other barriers, communication barriers you're seeing? And I'm going to move on while you're putting those in because I don't want us to run out of time. But please put in the chat communication barriers that you're seeing with your students, your autistic students. And I'm going to talk about the cultural iceberg. So some of you may be familiar with Edward T. Hall, and yes, group work assignments, yes. Edward T. Hall was a cultural anthropologist who specialized in nonverbal communication. And he said that when we think about a culture, we usually think about this surface culture. We think about food and music, literature, language, things like that. But what really make up a culture are these deep culture areas that we need to actually live in a culture and learn through nonverbal observation. They aren't taught didactically in the culture. And so things like communication styles and rules, facial expressions, eye contact, conversational patterns in different situations, handling and displaying of emotions, tone of voice. So someone said being able to reciprocate in a conversation, that is a cultural expectation. That's one of the things, right? Also, notions of courtesy and manners, concepts of self and time, attitudes towards work and authority, approaches to religion, decision-making, problem solving. All of these things are cultural expectations. They're all learned in a culture through nonverbal observation. Now, do you remember what I said all autistic people have? A nonverbal learning disability. We aren't learning it through nonverbal observation. So these are the potential conflicts in all of these areas and more. A typical person learns these just fine and doesn't even know they're being taught. Furthermore, these all flex throughout any environment you're in. So it's well known that when you teach an autistic person something, they have difficulty transferring that skill across settings. Yeah? Here's why. All of these are different in different family groups, in different friend groups, in different classrooms, in different organizations, in different work teams, in different cities, in different states, in different countries. They are different. And you, if you don't have a nonverbal learning disability, can pick up on those subtle differences and adapt to them. We cannot. So here's an example from my childhood. When I was a child, there was one home in our neighborhood where you could jump on the sofa and swear, and that was perfectly okay. And then there was another home where you could not do that. You were not allowed to do it. So they decided they needed to put me in social skills classes and teach me how to behave so I didn't keep getting in trouble in different people's houses, right? So what do you think they taught me to do? Anybody? One house it was okay to do it, another house it wasn't. Right, don't jump on the couch. That's what they taught me. Don't jump anywhere. How did that serve me as a child in elementary school? Did not serve me well, right? I was called goody two-shoes. I was called a teacher's pet. I was called stuck up, right? I did not have very many friends. The girls in 5th grade wrote a letter about why they didn't like me. All sorts of terrible things because I was taught to never do the bad things. If kids never do bad things, it's hard for them to have friends. Now, jumping on the sofa and swearing in a house where you're allowed to do it, right? We can't read the room though. We can't read the room. We're not able to read the room. So here's the thing. These cultural rules are flexible. We cannot flex. There is no ability to. As we get older, we can learn, right? But not because you're teaching us, because we learn. So here's the thing. This is a quote from Jane. You want to read it, Jane?
Sure, but I also, well, let me do the quote first. This is Stella Young, who's a wonderful self-advocate. And I love that she's pictured here in her chair with her knitting. And I'll read the quote. That quote, "The only disability in life is a bad attitude," unquote. The reason that's bullshit is the only amount of smiling at a flight of stairs has never made it turn into a ramp. No amount of smiling in the middle of a bookshelf and radiating a positive attitude is going to turn all those books into Braille. And can you go to the next slide? Thank you. And no amount of social skills training will turn a neurodivergent brain into a neurotypical brain. And I think that's one of the things that we're talking about is many of us who are neurotypical are really trying to see what strategies we can put in place for our students to become neurotypical. And it's really not what we should be doing. What we should be doing is to, number one, assist the campus to become more accessible. And number two, assist the student to be able to navigate our campuses with their neurodivergent brain. I like what you said, Sarah, that with age and I'll say experience, you learn things, but not because we're teaching them,
Right.
because you're able to learn them. And I think that is such a crucial point that many of us at college and parents of autistic kids need to hear.
Yeah. So thank you. I should put your name down here as this quote from Jane Brown.
That's only the rest is from
Okay.
Sara, the previous picture.
So let me
Yes.
go on to tell you what you can do. Here's your takeaway. So here are your tools. Okay. When someone is behaving in a way that you have not expected based on those cultural things, you have a tool and you can teach this to other students, typical students. Most respectful interpretation, or as my students say, give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Instead of thinking, oh, they're being rude, or they said that to be mean, or someone put a thing in there about the grandmother and the grandchild, right? That our direct communication can come across as rude. First, have a most respectful interpretation. If that doesn't work for you, do something called manage your stories. Brene Brown talks about this. Ask some questions, ask clarifying questions, repeat and reword your own statements. So first of all, you can say, I'm not sure I understand. Are you angry with me? It sounds like you might be angry. Or I'm not sure I understood what you meant. Could you say that again another way? Or I'm not sure what I said came across right. Let me try to say it again another way, right? So you can repeat, reword. You can also own your own boundaries. So let's say a student is getting really ramped up and they're starting to shout or something. If it's safe and you're getting triggered by their triggering, you can simply say, I need to go get a glass of water. I'll be right back. You don't need to add until you've calmed down, right? You don't need to deal with their boundary. You can just own your own boundary. Or if someone's standing too close to you, you can say, you know, I need a little more personal space. I'm just going to move over here. You don't need to teach them how to stand close to people, et cetera. We're talking about college students here, right? I mean, did I teach robot arms to my son? Sure, I did. Right. Robot arms, for those of you who don't know, are like only stand this close to people. He never learned it. That's not how we learn. I tried. And then last but not least, teach your students self-advocacy. Teach them to let people know what they need in communication. What did I need to know as a young kid who liked to jump on couches with their friends? I needed to know to say to the kids, hey, is this a house we can jump on the couch in or not? Or you're all jumping on the couch. Will you tell me if the parents are coming and we're going to get in trouble? Because I might not notice if they're coming, right? They just needed to tell me what I needed to know to advocate for myself. They needed to tell me who I was so I could tell other people who I was. That's all. Okay. So nonverbal communication, let's look at it a little more. These are the things involved in nonverbal communication, all those things on the cultural iceberg, right? Facial expressions, gestures, tone, body language, how we use space, eye gaze, how we choose to appear, what artifacts we have around, how we use our sense of humor. Do we have a sense of humor? Yes, we do. Also, unspoken, implied, or hidden meaning within communication. This will trip us up. If you use implicit rather than explicit language, you don't need to change the entire way you talk. That's kind of insulting to us. But if someone isn't understanding what you're saying, add some more direct language on top of it. So depending on where you are in the United States, if you're up here in the Northwest where I live, nobody likes to say what they really mean. And I grew up in Buffalo, New York, where everybody likes to say exactly what they mean. And so I have a double whammy because I'm autistic and I'm from the East Coast. So I just say what I mean. Nobody here says what they mean. So you can be direct and kind, though. That's the thing that I want people to know. Another quote from Brene Brown is, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. If a student isn't picking up on what you're saying, add some direct language on top of it. And this, of course, varies across cultures and within cultures as well. Up to 85% of our language is nonverbal. The thing to note is recent research shows not only do we not understand you and your nonverbal communication, you don't understand us. So again, don't make assumptions based on our nonverbal communication. Okay, real quickly, language and stress. We've all had this experience of where we have looked at a piece of paper and there've been just words all over it. There's now a new word in the dictionary, TLDR, too long, didn't read. And then we have this nice piece of paper where there's white space and bullet points and pictures. And we're like, oh, I can read that. Again, with research shows visual is very important to learning. We used to think there were learning styles, right? Some people were visual, some were auditory, some were that and that. People have preferences, but all people need visual for learning. So that's an important, all people who can see need visual for learning. Okay, so I want to talk to you about plain language. Plain language, and here's the link down here. You'll be able to click on it, plainlanguage.gov, if you're not familiar with it, is language that's wording, structure, and design. So 3 things are so clear that the readers can find what they need, understand it, and use it. If you are faculty, you should be using it in assignments. If you are staff, you should be using it in emails and posters and other written communication. Super important. It should be on websites. It should be everywhere. Where do we usually hide our communication? Underneath the flowery language of, hi, how are you? Da, 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 all that stuff. So here's an example. Before, the student applicant should be sure to be on time, submit an official copy of his or her transcript, 2 letters, da, 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 all this stuff. It looks like a math word problem to me. After, written directly to the person rather than third person, gives the important information up front. So submit the following items to our grants office by the April 15th. Yeah, basic tenet of UDL, yes. Gives the list of what they need to submit and then tells them where to submit it. So you can literally check off what you've done as you do it, and you know when it's due right up front. We just filled out an application to go to a conference. At the very end of the 15-page application, it said, you must have your president's permission for this, and we're going to email this directly to your president. At the end of a 15-page application. They didn't email it to us, they emailed it to our president. Can you imagine? Anyway. All right, hope it wasn't any of you. So this is a tenet for us. Students do well if they can, and if they can't, something is getting in the way. We need to figure out what so we can help. So a lot of you are already on this, right? With asking the questions, etc., to your students. So this comes from that collaborative problem solving that I mentioned way back at the beginning. I'm going to tell you the 3 steps really quickly. I can't teach you how to do it. I'm just going to tell you the 3 steps, but you really need to get the book to learn how to do it. You're going to gather information from what's going on. You're going to state your concern. So we had to use this in our office just the other day. A student came in very upset from a class, didn't want to wear their mask anymore, was having a meltdown, put them in their quiet room. One of my peer mentors went in and had this collaborative problem solving conversation with them. Brainstorm solutions with the student. And then I actually lied about it being a 3-step process. It's actually a 4-step process. You have to circle back to follow up, which I circled back with the student and said, what is your plan when this happens in the future? What are we going to do? It's important to realize it is not a negotiation or an agreement. It is an attempt to solve a problem, and you're both trying to figure it out. It's going to come up on the screen in 1 second, the answer to that question. So here's the steps: information, concern, solution, check back, and repeat. Changeable by J. Stewart Avalon, PhD is the book. Changeable by J. Stewart Avalon, PhD is the book. Okay, so you just do this again and again. Here's the super cool thing about collaborative problem solving. We use it with all of our students. It is research-based to improve executive functioning, improve cognitive flexibility and frustration tolerance, and problem-solving skills. Okay, now I'm gonna turn it over to Jane. Well, in 1 second. The first thing I'm gonna talk about is we're gonna be talking about put on your mask first, burnout and demoralization, and taking breaks. And the first thing I want to talk about, and then Jane, you can piggyback on this, is putting on your own mask first, which now has dual meaning, right? We always thought of it as putting on your own mask in the airplane when the oxygen masks come down, right? You have to be able to breathe before your students or before the person next to you breathes, but also now you have to wear your own COVID mask before you help someone else get theirs. And this is my own mask supply before I got my N95 masks. But anyway, Jane, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the rest. Do you have more to say about masks? We're putting on your own mask first.
No, I think you covered it. And I think, but it's true. We have changed that idea. You know, we always talked about putting our own mask on first and the only scenario we had about that was an airplane, the oxygen mask. And now it's completely different. So a couple things before we start. A few of you had questions about things like disability and conduct and when to determine if a student's otherwise qualified. And I wanted to, if there's time after we go through the slides, I'll be happy to talk about that a little bit. But certainly if you have other questions, I'm going to try and go through the next few slides in just a few minutes so that we can have time for some discussion and questions. And I have some of the things that I've captured from the chat, Sarah, that we can address afterwards. So if you can go to the next slide, some of you may have been able to listen. I believe it was last week, possibly the week before, but Margaret Camp from Clemson did a wonderful webinar through a head on burnout and demoralization. And I wanted to talk with all of us today because when we talk about returning to campus, we're also talking about the stress of the last 2 years, not only for our students, but for us too. So I wanted to address that a little bit because we're going through a time in disability services and in higher ed in general, where there's never been more open positions. And a lot of people are going through what we're reading about as the great quit or the great resignation of 2020, 2021, and 2022. So I want to address this a little bit because we're all feeling it. Can you click on a couple of the next lines, Sarah? Burnout really implies that personal issues are impacting or impairing our work life, where demoralization feels like professional issues are impairing or impacting their ability to do good work and thus affect people personally as well. Many of us are feeling both of these things. Demoralization has a lot more to do with how you feel supported, not only by your team, but by your institution. And as many people have put it, you know, I don't know why disability services suddenly became the mask police during the pandemic, but by doing that, you didn't feel supported by the institution. Many people don't feel supported by institutions that are saying now, no, everybody has to be full-time in person. There are no options, which we're hearing a lot of. And people are feeling uncomfortable with that. Next slide, please, Sarah. But with burnout, you're getting a lot of messages, some of them nonverbal, and some of them unintentional. But a lot of it is saying either to ourselves or from the messages we're getting from work that, gee, if only you were more resistant, or if you had more stamina, or gee, if only you managed your time better, if you conserved your personal resources, or gee, I guess you're just not tough enough. Or maybe if you set better boundaries for yourself, like, gee, are you really turning off all of your electronics at 5 or 6 o'clock? I know I'm not, because I'm on the East Coast. It's 5 o'clock now. Are you using your time wisely? Maybe you're supposed to work smarter, not harder. We hear that a lot. Have you tried deep breathing? Well, just as the previous slide from our friend, deep breathing never made steps turn into a ramp. Have you had a massage lately? You really should take better care of yourself, or perhaps therapy would work for you. A lot of burnout really places the blame on ourselves. And so when we say, I'm burnt out, I think an employee who's autistic that I work with put it best this week when I said, gee, you're sounding to me like you might be burnt out. And she said, I'm not burnt out. My brain stopped working. And it was just that clear. The line in the sand was just that clear. And I said, so what did you do? And she said, well, my brain stopped working. I told everybody I couldn't work and I took the rest of the day off. Now, I don't know how her team at work felt about that, but I loved it. I loved that this person self-advocated and said, I'm burnt out, I need to stop. Next slide, please, Sarah. With burnout, it really localizes the problem to the individual person, that they're lacking something or they're doing something incorrectly. Now, we all know, and Sarah and I were talking before we started today, that someone was in a webinar last week was talking about, and it might have been Margaret, actually, as I was listening to her webinar over again, where she said that she really enjoyed working from home for the first 6 weeks or so, until she got to the point where she realized instead of working at home, she was living at work because she was available around the clock with all of her technology. So it really, when you say I'm burnt out, it makes it sound like it's in the individual, but actually for the past couple of years, it's been the situation. But with burnout, you really consider that the fixing the problem belongs with the individual. And perhaps well-intentioned but flawed approach of asking stressed workers to save themselves. Oh, you're burnt out, take a day off. Well, a day off may not help. It may mean real policies like a supervisor saying, we are all only working from 8:30 to 4:30 or whatever your office hours are, and everyone is taking a lunch break. Get away from your desk, turn off the computer. It implies personal issues are impairing the person's professionalism. As I heard from someone the other day, oh, well, we can't really ask her, she has young children. And it was said like that. And I thought, gosh, that person's one of the hardest working people I know. Did you give her the option of saying whether she wanted to contribute or not? Or did you just say, oh, she has young children, so we're going to assume she doesn't have time for things? A lot of this really, it has negative individual ideas, and that's what bothers me about the burnout concept. Next slide, please, Sarah.
You know why I put boots on this slide, Jane?
Work boots?
Pull yourself up by your boot.
Bootstraps, right. Oh, that's right. See, I didn't get it. I like that. I really like, because that really is it. I used to have a boss who did those kinds of things, where if you had to leave and said, you know what, I know I have to draft that policy. I really want to process it a little bit. I'm going to draft it in the morning. I'll get it to you before noon. And you would go back in the morning and it would be on your desk. And it just gave you the idea that you weren't good enough, that if you were good enough, you would have stayed and done it. And it always made you feel like, gee, it's my problem that I don't manage my time well. You can't deep breathe your way out of a pandemic. You cannot stretch your way out of terrible class sizes. You cannot individual behavior your way out of structural problems. This is from Chelsea Prax from the American Federation of Teachers. During the pandemic, I don't know if there's anyone that's been more stressed out than or burnt out than our K-12 teachers, except people who work in higher ed. But the K-12 situation has gotten a lot more media. And I don't know that we have taken the time to process what we've been through and what we've imposed on our students because of it. Not individually, but rather than, as someone put it in the chat very well, that rather than trying to mainstream. We're broadening the stream, and I really like that idea, and it's a great visual. But how much of that were we able to do when we have so many people constraining our accommodations? Next slide, please, Sarah. So we really feel demoralized when there is that landscape of privilege around accommodations, when our supervisors are saying, you know, this family's gone to the president again, can you please just give the student what they want? I'm hearing that more and more, and it's so frustrating when we've worked so hard to make sure that people are getting appropriate accommodations. We spend so much time responding to complaints rather than being able to be proactive. The letter mills and watch lists and the whole thing with Operation Varsity Blues, where everyone's feeling like, well, privileged people get what they need, where people who are not so privileged just have to deal with the policies. The letter mills of things like, what I mean by that, a lot of people will go to these online services where you can get a letter and get an emotional support animal. And we know they're not legal, and we all have lists of all of those letter mills, but we're still seeing them. So then trying to tease out preferences and comfort from need and disability. What did people get used to while going to school remotely that now they feel they need when they come back in person? And how much of that really is a disability accommodation, and how much of it does everyone need returning? We all have hiring freezes and high turnover and attrition rates, and we're all getting our budgets cut. And with that, we have staff cuts. Many of us in accommodation meetings are seeing parents and therapists and lawyers joining the student. And often the student isn't talking, all of their advocates are. And that's really demoralizing. And then managing not only student expectations, but parent expectations. And we're hearing a lot more from parents. All of this is making our job that much more difficult. And when it comes to autistic students, some of the students need more advocates. And yet some of them don't know the higher ed landscape enough to know about things like the transition from high school and how things might change. So all of this becomes a real conundrum for us to deal with and to be able to deal ourselves out of when we're trying to do a good job for everyone. Next slide, Sarah. So what we talk about and what Margaret did a wonderful job explaining was the work of Doris Santoro and remoralization, how to get ourselves moving again, and reminding us why we do what we do and for whom. And it feels like there is an again coming. And I think a lot of us are feeling like we're all afraid to say things might be getting back to normal. Where I live in Connecticut, most of the mask mandates are lifted. Most stores you go into, a lot of people are still wearing masks. Sometimes people aren't. Some people are saying, you know, you don't have to wear that thing, and other people aren't comfortable taking them off. Nobody really knows how to put your toe back into the water, and I don't know how many people are ready to jump back in. Last week, the governor of Florida really reprimanded a group of 5 students who had introduced him, saying that they shouldn't be wearing masks and they had to take off. I forget the quote, but it was something like that, that corona falsity that what they were wearing around their face. And that made everyone so uncomfortable. What about our students who are compromised and really need to wear a mask? Are comments like that going to give everyone the opportunity to give our students a hard time for needing to wear a mask? Next slide, please, Sarah. So we really want to return to why we do what we do and reconnect with professional communities like you're all doing today, and revisit what it means to do good work in difficult times, recommitting to our purpose and us having resilience, which is a wonderful way to model resilience in our students. What do we need to practice, accept? Where do we need to be flexible? And are we perseverating on certain things? And then resistance. In what areas do I need to stand firm? Are there certain things that you cannot compromise on in your office and for your values? And then assess the moral center and maintain integrity. And with thanks again to Margaret for a wonderful presentation and giving us a lot of good things to think about. I think that's the last slide. Am I correct, Sarah? It is. So we want to take some time to talk, and I hope all of you can think about some of those things on burnout and demoralization and remoralization, because I think it's so important in order for us to be able to address a lot of our students, especially those who are autistic. Thank you. I'm trying to go through some of the chat quickly. Yes, please, do an evaluation before you leave, if you can. Sarah, shall we address some of I want to go back to Christine's comment. That was shaming.
Yes, it was shaming and bullying, I think.
Which one?
The governor.
Yes,
Both.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It was so uncomfortable even to watch.
Yeah.
They showed it a couple times on the news here, and it was so, watching the students kind of recoil, not knowing what to do. And there were 5 students, 1 took off their masks, the other 4 left them on, which I thought was very brave. It was very, really, honestly, it was so hard to watch, even to see them doing that on TV.
So, Jane, someone had a question about conduct and the line. The person who had that question, if you're still here, could you reiterate that question in the chat?
It was
I don't see it.
well back, and I want to make sure, Will, if you can, or it might be Ernie, if I just want to make sure we get a copy of the chat. I know there's a way to do that. I just want to make sure.
Put it in the Q&A might make it easier for us to see it too.
Right, because I don't think there's as much. I'll talk for a minute while if you're still here, if you can put it back in. But disability and conduct, it is so important to make sure that your conduct boards are appropriately trained, because many people really don't understand that. Of course, you use the same conduct. The standards do not change. The process is accommodated. And that's what's really important to understand. If a student with any disability, autism or anything else, breaks a conduct code, they are absolutely to go through the same conduct process as everyone else. However, the process needs to be accommodated if the student needs it, and the student may not know what to ask for. If they haven't been through a conduct process before, they may not have any idea how to ask for an accommodation of a process they don't know about. So someone needs to educate the student and then suggest some possible accommodations. And then the student can request what they want. They may need an advocate. For someone who is not really sure if they can speak in that kind of stressful environment, they may need to be given the option to write out their answers to questions that are given to them. They may need a different form of communication. They might need an iPad to speak. They may need someone who can sort of debrief the questions with them and then allow them to answer it. It might be a very different process, but it's very important to make sure that anyone that has broken a conduct code, manifestation determination, which is a term out of IDEA, that ends with the high school diploma. Manifestation determination means that if someone has a mandated IEP and they break a conduct code, you have a determination meeting to see if the behavior was caused by their disability. That ends with special education and the high school diploma. If the student is in a post-secondary program of any type, if a conduct code is broken, they have the same standards as everyone else, but you have to understand your own process so you can assist the student in requesting accommodations for that process. So I hope that's helpful, but I'm happy to answer more offline. We've done a number of ahead presentations on this. The other piece is otherwise qualified. And I know that that's been an issue for lots of folks because of K-12 using sometimes a success, they use a success model, and sometimes in that success model, they will use modified grades and modified curriculum. So if I have different courses and a different grading scale, but yet I've gotten to that post-secondary level, and now everything is the same, I may not be able to manage those classes. So it's really important for people to understand that there isn't special education in college. There might be remedial classes, there might be developmental classes, or there might be a certificate that's more appropriate than a degree. But students must be otherwise qualified. You can't change the curriculum. The wording for the ADA or in 504 is we cannot fundamentally alter the curriculum. That's by law, though we're getting increasing requests in that vein. We're getting a lot of people that say, well, I can't write a 10-page paper, so you have to let me write a 5-page paper. And that's not the way it works in higher ed. Concerned about disability versus behavior versus student conduct and limitations to inclusion, determining not otherwise qualified. That determination can be really difficult because the only thing that we're given by university or college policies is a grade point average at the end of a semester in order for someone to be either on probation or sometimes academically dismissed. So we don't have a lot that's given, but increasingly people are giving midterm grades so that people can make a decision sometimes before the end of a refund period. And that can be a good option. There was another concern that, yeah, I think is important to address. Sarah, do you want to talk about mental health support?
Yeah, I just put a link in the chat for the Therapist Neurodiversity Collective, which is a group that is gathering together appropriate mental health support for neurodivergent people. So that is one place to look. The other thing that you can do is, much as Jane mentioned, educating your care team or your behavior intervention team, you can also start to educate the counseling center on your campus about working with autistic students, or bring in autistic people themselves to present to your counseling center on what they need and what they needed as a college student, because it's often very different from what they're taught in school.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea, Sarah. And I would also encourage any of you that have the opportunity, please go to the counseling master's classes that are nearby to you, the social work classes, and encourage those graduate students to go into this field. Because there we will find some people who are autistic that aren't thinking about doing this specific casework. And that's what we really need. We need more autistic mental health professionals, and we need more people going into autism as a specialty. And I think that's really an important piece. Someone is concerned about how to create additional classes or direct services to specifically students on the autism spectrum. Sarah, do you want to talk about how to start a program?
Yeah, really briefly.
That might be in a 6-hour presentation.
So we're part of a group called the Alliance. And I would say if you reach out to me or Jane, and you've got our information on the PowerPoint, but you could also send an email directly there to asn@bellevuecollege.edu. My staff will send you back a template, which will tell you how to get in touch with the Alliance. And they'll also send you a webinar about our program, the Neurodiversity Navigators program. So you'll learn more about it that way as well. And you'll get to hear me talking more.
Which is
so,
always wonderful.
Yeah, I have longer hair in the picture, in the video. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, Sarah. I also want to bring up, while Sarah's talking about her website or her video on the website, Sarah has an amazing website for the Navigators program that I really encourage all of you to go to, because knowing that there's a large and diverse population of autistic students at Bellevue, what Sarah's created is not only information for the people in her program, the Neurodiverse Navigators, but also a program, sorry, not a program, but a page for students who aren't in the program. And that page gives students who don't choose to identify as autistic or don't choose to participate in an autism program, it still gives them some executive function help, some ideas for when you need to do things like register for classes, some ideas of how to get involved on campus. It's a wonderful example of how to be more universal in your services, that you can offer a program, but also offer to students who aren't in the program some additional help without it being one-to-one or taking more staff time or increasing caseload. So please take a look. It's a wonderful page.
thanks, Jane.
Of course. And people are telling you that's great and they love the idea. We probably have time for one or two more questions if people have. I know people were a little concerned in a couple of, yes, Esmeralda, Sarah put that in the chat a couple lines up at 521. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about literal interpretations? A couple people had questions about self-awareness and literal interpretation. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
So can you say more about self-awareness and literal interpretation? Like, do we know that we literally interpret things? Is that what you mean?
No, I think two separate things. People wanted to talk about how to help students develop self-awareness. I think it was when we were talking about self-advocacy too, what's the best way to teach autistic students self-advocacy and self-awareness?
Using collaborative problem solving, 100%, hands down. Get Stuart Ablon's book, Collaborative Problem Solving. Use it all day, every day, as much as you possibly can. It is the very best tool for autistic growth in all areas. It will teach perspective. It will teach self-awareness. It will teach language skills. It will teach it teaches everything, executive functioning, without sitting down and saying, I'm going to teach you these things. I am an evangelist for collaborative problem solving. I've been using it for 20 years. I have seen it, and this is not an exaggeration, change thousands of people's lives. From non-speaking autistic people to people with Down syndrome, across the board. Collaborative problem solving, use it. As far as, what was the other one? Literal language?
Yes, literal understanding.
What's the question?
How to help people understand when things aren't literal. I know.
So can you give me an example?
Let me think. I guess the thing I would usually think of is, what we usually hear, well, gee, this student is writing bullet points, not putting it into a narrative. And I'm asking essay questions. And they seem to be very bright in my class, but when I give an essay question on a test, they just give me a few bullet points and it's very literal and concrete.
Okay, well, I would say unless it's an English class, that's okay. Like they could probably get an accommodation around that, unless it's an English class, which they have to get through English and they have to learn how to write a paragraph.
You doing the Stuart Ablon. Yeah, I was just going to write it. Okay. And
Oh.
is the book called Creative Problem Solving or
No, it's-
Collaborative Problem Solving? And Michelle says maybe better ways to write instructions. To
Writing
write
instruction approaches. So I answered someone in the Q&A a little bit about that. Mind mapping sometimes helps. So starting from those bullet points, sometimes having a conversation and recording what they're saying to you in response, right? So they can go from their spoken words to written, right? Scaffolding those conversations. So let's assume maybe they have dysgraphia, disorder of written expression. So asking follow-up questions to pull out that information. I have often had to tell students that in creative writing, especially, you have to lie to answer the questions, because it's not so much literal as they don't understand that they have to make up something, right? That there is no actual answer, right? What was the author thinking? Nobody knows what the author was thinking. You have to let them know that that's like, there isn't a right answer to that question.
The best response I've ever heard to that was about that was a mom who said to me, but the professors don't understand. A cloud will always be a cloud to Kevin. It won't signal doom. It won't say what's going to happen to the setting. It's a cloud.
Right. Right.
So David asks about writing instruction approaches for neurodiverse learners. And I think what Sara just addressed is absolutely true. Telling students there is no one right answer. How do we, I'm trying to think, because that's usually what I say to people when the professor says, what was the author trying to say? Often we get students saying, but how do you know that's what the author was trying to say? And
so
we don't,
you can give them a couple of options. One option is if they're that literal, they may need an alternative assignment to write about something that is more concrete for them. So it depends on what is our goal for this student, right? If they are that literal. So I'm gonna use my son as an example. He's the best example I have. Every essay he wrote in high school was on zombie apocalypse. Every essay for everything. He even wrote his college entrance essays on zombie apocalypse. Thank you, Christine. Then he went to video game programming college, where he got to write essays about video games, right? He now makes $160,000 a year working at Microsoft. So
he did okay writing about the zombie apocalypse.
he did.
I see Will, so that we must be out of time. But before we sign off, I want to thank Will for inviting us. And I also want to thank Sara, who I know has not had the opportunity to present to this group before. And I'm sure you all got as much out of her presentation as I do every time I speak with Sara. So Sara, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you all for allowing Will to invite us again today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sara Sanders Gardner, for your presentation. And thank you, Dr. Jane Thierfeld Brown, for bringing your esteemed colleague with you. We appreciated you sharing from the wealth of your knowledge with the California community colleges and with their community partners who attended the webinar today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone who attended.